In a dismal future, a blazing neon light from the past cuts a pathway toward tomorrow. Bounding into comics and Brett R. Smith present Escape from the Future.
Awesome. So you have a new creator-owned project that you launched in 2022, which has been a big success. It's called Core Draft: The Reckoning. Tell our viewers about that.
I mean, Core Draft: The Reckoning, it's a fantasy genre-based book. It's kind of like if you took Conan, just this real tough, raw barbarian, and dumped him into a Game of Thrones, Dungeons and Dragons type world with a lot more magic and stuff. I mean, I know there's magic in Conan, but for the most part, it's more just sword clashing and whatnot.
Yeah, this seems more like sword and sorcery.
Yeah, this is more sword and sorcery. You know, the world that Dennis and I, my co-creator of it, are building right now, the section of it is there's 11 tribes, different tribes. We focus on 3 of them. Core Draft is from the Red Lions. That's why he has a big red lion tattoo, because every tribe member has that same tattoo somewhere. It doesn't have to be, you know, on like their chest like Core Draft does. Adriana, his I guess girlfriend, for lack of a better word, she has a Black Eagle tattoo. She's from the Black Eagles tribe. And it's just it's a real fun book to kind of let loose on, since I did superheroes for so long. Core Draft itself is basically the first chapter of it, the first volume that's out. His tribe was basically slaughtered when him and Adriana were out on a quest for the leader of his tribe. And when he comes back, he discovers this. So now it's a mystery because he doesn't know why his tribe was targeted. And he can see by, you know, the dead laying there who it was, because it's not like his tribe didn't kill some of the other attacking people in the process, but he still doesn't know why. And he doesn't know who set them out to do this. So now he's the last man standing of his tribe, and he needs to avenge them. And with the help of Adriana, he sets out to do that. And it's kind of like gathering clues and such and getting to the whodunit of it. So the first book is basically, it is a one and done, from the standpoint of you get to an end and you're like, oh, that was satisfying. But like everything, it continues on. And we're starting the second volume now to launch in the spring. So it's just been, you know, it's been really fun. It's been, you know, really successful. We're getting a lot of good feedback from the people that have got it and read it and done online reviews and such. So
it looks great. It looks beautiful. You know, I think the first pages I saw was that big double page spread fight scene.
Oh,
and, you know, lots of action, some good violence. I would say it's, how would you rate it? PG-13, R?
No, the whole book, because of one page in it, it's R.
Okay.
And it's not even a violence page. We'll just call it an intimate page between Core Draft and Adriana.
Okay.
But because of that page, it is R.
Gotcha. That's cool though. That's cool.
You know, it's like kids these days, I guess I would say 15 on up.
Whatever's in there as far as action or violence, it's very tame in comparison to what is, you know, considered, you know, adult or mature content today. You know, it was even with the Marvel Max series, I remember, you know, which was a little bit more ultra violent, like with the Punisher. But I remember really liking that stuff because it more reflected kind of what was going on the big screen with like action movies and whatnot. So, okay. So, the initial Indiegogo campaign for Core Draft is done, and that's complete. And those orders have been shipped out and fulfilled. I think you just wrapped that up the other day.
Yeah, they're all done.
I saw you posting. You were actually packaging stuff, shipping it out, which is you know, the other fun part of doing Indiegogo campaigns. So those are all fulfilled. How do our viewers get a copy now that the campaign is complete?
You can go to
if they missed it.
Right. Coredrath.com, and it's KOR-DRATH. So the name of the book, .com. and there's a shop, and everything that was on the campaign is there. We just set up an eBay store as well.
Oh,
so you can go to eBay and search Cordrath, and that's what I did. When I set it up, I was talking to my partner on it on the phone, and I said, just go to eBay. And I said, because I'm curious, just go to the search bar and type in Cordrath, and it comes right up.
Nice.
So
very cool.
Yeah, so you can go both those, and the stuff ships out quick. I got a couple going out on Monday actually that I packaged up this morning. So
cool.
So yeah, you just get them from there, and then when the second campaign launches in the spring, we'll obviously have them there as well. But if you don't want to wait, you can just go to the stores. So
yeah, when you launch that in the spring, we'll have you back on. We'll talk about that.
Oh yeah.
That'll be exciting.
Yeah,
so,
dude,
definitely. Do you miss working for the big two, or are you finding more satisfaction in the indie comic market by doing your own creator-owned projects? Because like you, I've worked on all of these 80-year-old legacy IPs and franchises. We've worked on a lot of the same stuff. I don't know how we've missed each other. It's kind of curious how, like, I haven't colored any of your stuff over the years.
Right.
We got to fix that.
Yeah.
But when you're coming up and you get out of school, your dream is to work on X-Men, to work on Superman, to work on Spider-Man. These books that we grew up reading and loving and idolizing. I mean, it is essentially our mythology. It's American mythology, similar to the Greeks and Perseus and Theseus. So it's a big deal, I don't, I think it's sort of a rite of passage in a lot of ways for those of us who came up and wanting to break into the industry. And I don't regret it at all, man.
Oh no, neither do I.
But at the same time, I find myself being more excited these days about coloring new stuff and working on new things and creating new things with other people. And maybe it's just we're older, and maybe it's kind of like, yeah, I've colored Superman, been there, done that. I think it's part of that. But where do you fall on the creator-owned stuff as opposed to doing stuff for the big two? And if the big two wanted you back,
obviously I like doing the creator-owned stuff more because it's creator-owned. Those two words, there's no boss to it, even though on everything I've done, I've collaborated with somebody on it. And with Cordrath, it's Dennis Turner. There's still no boss. We talk about everything. We spent 2 hours he lives in town, but I'm not going to drive a half hour, and he's not, just to talk over the script. But we spent 2 hours on the phone yesterday morning going over the first 20 pages of Cordrath Volume 2, before I start drawing it. Because I'm going to start drawing tomorrow. So, and we do that, with every script that we do. And I've done that when it was First Man and my buddy Rob that co-wrote that, so on and so forth. When it's working for the big two, I would always want to, whether it was over the phone or once email, I would always ask the editor if it was a writer I didn't know, if I could get their contact so I could call them or email them just to introduce myself. I would generally try to do that if I could down the line as well with like the colorist, same reason. And obviously now that I'm doing the creator own thing, I am the editor as well. So I obviously talk to everybody. But yeah, it's definitely, it's more fulfilling. I enjoy it more. Obviously there's just, you can't even calculate the amount of freedom to doing it. And like you said, when I got out of art school, I want to work for Marvel. I want to work for DC. I didn't even set sights on smaller independent companies. I didn't send them samples. I want to work for these two, and that was it.
Yeah.
And it worked out, luckily. Or like you said, not luckily, but just going out there with the initiative and stuff.
You made it happen, man. You made it happen.
So I did that, and I did it for 25 years, I guess. And it was fun, and I still enjoy those characters, but I enjoy books from the early 2000s. I enjoy the stuff from the 90s, and then obviously 80s, 70s, and earlier, because I'm still a collector. But my spin rack is filled with pretty much what I said. I've got books from the 60s on there, 70s, 80s, 90s, and probably early 2000s.
Yep.
But there's no iteration of the characters I grew up with and drew professionally, and even some of the ones I haven't drawn, there's no iterations they're doing now that I want to draw. You know, they're not. I don't want to draw some of the costumes. I mean, for a while there, it got a little too nutty after the movies where it's like, ooh, Cap's going to have all the buckles and shit. And it's like, and it's still that way with some of the characters. And it's just like, guys, the reason the costumes were basically lines drawn on a naked guy or naked woman is because you have to do a page a day.
Yeah.
And you guys are still expecting that turnaround, but it's like, no, this is what the costume looks like now.
Right.
You know, and I don't mind doing a one-off as a commission of those guys, but I wouldn't want to draw them monthly. Mm-hmm. And just the direction of the stories. You know, I look through these comics and I'm just like, and it's not even talking about, you know, whether it be politics or any agenda stuff in them. I just looked at them and I'm like, where's the actual fun in these comics with the old school action and the splash pages? And, you know, we grew up in a time where, and I always use this as an example because I could pull out a comic and show you, we grew up in a time where if the Avengers were walking around Avengers Mansion and it was lunchtime, they would be in costume. Mm-hmm. Cap would walk into the kitchen and be like, what's up, Jarvis? Oh, would you like a sandwich, sir? No, I'll make my own sandwich. Don't worry about it. But he's in costume with maybe the mask.
That's off. The mask off. Right.
Right. But now he walks into the kitchen in a t-shirt and jeans or a polo shirt and jeans or whatever. And Thor might walk in wearing regular clothes too. And then Tony Stark walks in wearing a suit. And, you know, Black Widow walks in wearing whatever. She could be wearing freaking Daisy Dukes and a t-shirt. I'm like, that's not, no, I grew up with all these guys walking in the kitchen in full fucking costume. Oops.
Right.
Full costume, you know, because it's comics.
Yeah.
It's freaking comics. That's the point. If they're not going to be fighting or doing something action filled in those 22 pages, I still get to see him in costume.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah,
and that's honestly, if I was the editor in chief of any of these companies, that would be a mandate. I'd be like, look, you're writing the book. I don't give a shit if Superman's walking into the Justice League headquarters, the Hall of Justice, and he's meeting Batman. They're wearing their costumes.
Yeah. And I look at it as also, it's just kind of lazy. It's lazy work.
Sure.
But yeah, the thing about the costumes, it's so funny because a lot of the designs would look good for a movie. They'd be fine for a movie, but they're not designed for panel work where somebody's having to draw this in potentially 4 to 6 panels. And then you've got a team, and then so you have the potential of 3 to 4 of them being in each panel on every page. So you're creating more work for the artist with these crazy costumes. You're also creating more work for the colorist because I got to color all this stuff.
Oh yeah.
You know, and it's funny. I was telling my girlfriend the other day that, you know, most guys don't want a team book. Most artists want Batman. They want Iron Man.
Right. They want
this singular guy. So you're not having to deal with, you know, 4 to 6 people potentially in every frame, and then having to draw all that stuff, and then, you know, creating double the work for the colorists. So it's a strange time, and I just think to myself, where are the editors? You know, this is where a good editor steps in and says, you know, put these guys in costume, or, you know, or let's dial back some of the details so it makes it more easier for our artists to work faster, and then we're on time, and hopefully we're ahead of the game. We're working 6 months ahead, which is what they used to do.
Yeah.
You know, now they're doing books and they come out the next month. It's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, when I started, the book I worked on wouldn't see print, I think, for 4 months. That was average.
Same here.
And then when I ended, you could say with the mainstream, I can remember I finished it and it was out the next month. You know, it was like going to the printer the following week.
Yeah.
And it was out the next month, which is just crazy.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I mean, it's escapism. And I still even know the majority of people that buy comics these days aren't what it used to be, which was 12-year-old, 15-year-old kids and stuff.
Well, boys,
and young 20s.
It was very much an industry which focused on boys. I mean, you did have the romance comics which sold like hotcakes back in the 70s. Chuck and I were talking about that on an interview last month, that, and some of those romance comic books brought in the girls, but it's always been largely a male focused industry.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's good. I mean, that's partially why Disney bought Marvel, was because
and I think
they had the princesses locked up. What they needed was to lock up boys and men.
And I think even guys in their 30s and 40s and 50s, whatever, that buy comics, I think if you ask them, they would say, yeah, I'd rather see these guys in costume all the time than, even in casual instances at their hangout, than plain clothes.
Right.
There was an issue of X-Men. I'll never forget this one either. It was when Andy Kubert was doing it. So early 90s, right? And I can't remember what was happening, but something was happening in New York. And on the page, it cut. They were all basically equal size panels for a reason. And it's because it was just cutting to a different scene of a different hero, like, Fantastic Four, Captain Britain, so on and so forth, as they were reacting to what they were seeing on TV or whatever, right? The big thing that was happening in downtown New York, whatever. And I remember the Fantastic Four panel. They were all in costume, but they were doing something casual at FF headquarters.
Right.
I remember this panel. I will never forget. I think it's one I have on my spin rack. Captain Britain, who I love, the Captain Britain that Alan Davis did with the redesign.
Yeah.
Captain Britain was sitting back in a freaking, like a lounge chair that you would have in your house, not a desk chair like we're sitting in, or gaming chair, but a nice lounge chair you'd watch TV in.
Lazy boy.
He had his legs up on a footstool. He was drinking tea because he's Captain Britain.
Right.
Dude, he was in full costume, mask on and everything.
I love it.
And I'm like, I'd rather see that than see Brian Braddock, who is Captain Britain, for people that don't know, sitting there in a t-shirt and jeans watching the same thing.
I agree. I just think
it's freaking comic books.
Well, yeah, and it's like, if he's out of costume, then he's just a muscular dude in a Barca lounge.
Right. And it's also tagging. And tagging is I first heard about that word in my first year at Kubert School from Erwin Hasen. Erwin Hasen used to do he drew Green Lantern in the Golden Age, and he also created a newspaper strip called Dondi. Erwin was a great guy, and he would always talk about tagging in your scene. So in other words, if, taking that example, if you just look at that panel and there's no dialogue, and it's a guy in a shirt and jeans drinking tea, a big guy, you'd go, okay, maybe it's Captain America. He's got blonde hair. I don't know. Who is it?
Right.
But if you draw him in his costume, you automatically go, oh, that's Captain Britain. You tagged him, so you know who it is. If you go into a McDonald's, and if you're lucky enough to have one that actually has real people and it's not automated, behind the counter, they're wearing uniforms. Right. Why? So you know that's an employee. That's a tag. And that's just it. You need to look at this stuff from it's visual communication. You're not supposed to read the dialogue. You should be able to look through a comic book and get the gist of the story without reading the word balloons.
I totally agree.
That is what good storytelling is. That's what Joe Kubert taught us.
Yeah.
Word balloons obviously help because they expound on things that you can't get across visually, Yeah. But when you just have a bunch of characters in a room all wearing plain clothes, and it can work with Iron Man because Robert Downey Jr., and this is something they carried over to the comics, gave them such distinct goatees and stuff.
Yeah, sure.
That if you drew that in a comic, well, sure. If you saw the movie, you'd probably go, oh yeah, that dude, that's Tony Stark. But what if you never saw the movie? Then you're just like, I don't know who these plain clothes dressed people are. Oh, what do you mean you don't know? That's Iron Man. That's Captain America. Then put him in costume so I know it.
Yeah.
And it's this is supposed to be a fun experience, a fun book. And going back to the romance stuff, I'd love it if stuff like that would make a comeback to try and get women into it, because so many women read romance. I mean, that's who read romance novels, are women. They're not guys.
Yeah.
And I think if it was done as a graphic novel and marketed right, you could probably get women into it.
I know manga does it. Manga
does it
selling a lot. Yeah.
But I think in the independent market right now, there are tons of different genres, which I think is fantastic because there is something for everyone. I mean, I tried telling my wife that because she likes reading murder mystery novels and stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I tried telling her, you can literally get that as a graphic novel, but she just doesn't have an interest,
Sure.
But there are all the different genres out there. And I think that's what's fun and exciting now. And you do have, because I go to the comic shop every Wednesday still.
Mm-hmm.
I don't buy barely much. I might get 1-2 books a week. It's not Marvel DC stuff anymore, which is sad. It is sad to me because I used to love that stuff, but it's not. It's independent type stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But you've got companies like Scout, Vault, I think Black Box is one, just all these different smaller companies putting stuff out, and it looks good. And I don't get a lot of it, but Dennis buys a ton of that stuff and does reviews on our YouTube channel and stuff. And, the stuff is really good. And it's like, kudos to those companies because I don't know how they're staying afloat. I can't imagine those books are selling super great, but somehow they're doing it. So more power to them.
Yeah.
But, back to the question. No, I mean, it would have to take a lot. If I had an email from one of the companies and they were like, we want you to draw, whatever book you want, you can have carte blanche and stuff, the pay would have to be right. And it would have to be in writing that it was literally like, yeah, you can do what you want. Kind of like when Jack Kirby went back to Marvel and he took over Captain America.
Yeah.
And was like, no, I don't want to integrate any of what you guys are doing in the Marvel universe in Captain America. Mm-hmm. And he really didn't.
Yeah.
Which was, bad because it's disjointed because he is part of the overall Marvel universe. So if Cap was in Marvel Team Up at the same time, it wouldn't relate to what Jack was doing in the book, really.
Sure.
Tangentially it might, but not really,
Yeah.
So yeah, it would have to be a carte blanche like that type of scenario. Because I'd like to draw the stuff again, but I want to draw the stuff I liked,
right,
from when I liked it.
Yeah, and recreate that, which is
recreate that vibe.
Well, and back then they were actually selling, in greater volumes than 50,000 print runs. Which back when you and I were working for Marvel in DC, that was a death knell. That meant that your book was getting canceled. Now the average is like 30, 40, maybe 50. I mean,
and I think
it's really,
and I know the whole thing. Like I was looking through, I can't remember what book it was specifically, but I'm trying to look around because I got stuff laying on the floor. But I was looking through a book, from the 80s, and back then, once a year, maybe it was twice, I think it was once a year, they put in the letters column. There's this rectangular vertical box that broke down like sales figures and all that crap, really small print. And it would say, closest issue sold to date. And whatever book I was looking at, it said like 289,000. Now, the books were 60 cents. That's when they were 60 cents. I get it. They were 60 cents. Everything was cheaper back then.
Yeah.
That's also something that needs to be taken into consideration.
Sure.
Now, the biggest thing is back then, you had video games that kids could go to, but let's be honest, they were garbage looking in the mid 80s.
Well, I mean, video games were fun back then, but they didn't take, you and I wouldn't sit and play for 8 hours straight.
You wouldn't play Centipede for 8 hours. You wouldn't play Frogger.
Even if you and I were playing Contra at my house on a Saturday morning or on a Saturday afternoon, we would probably play Contra for maybe 20 or 30 minutes. And then we would be like, let's go outside and play, or let's go outside and go swimming, or let's take our bikes.
Let's go do something outside. Right. Well, and our parents would kick us out of the house.
Yeah. They'd be like, you're watching too much TV.
When it was summertime at my house, between school years, even when my parents were both working, they'd be like, definitely on weekends, obviously when they were home, if we weren't doing something as a family, it'd be get up and get out of the house. We'll see you at dinner time.
Exactly.
And we're talking like 12 years old. I'm not talking like 16, 17. We're 10, 12 years old. They're like, get the hell out of the house.
Get out of here. Yeah.
And during the week too, when they were at work, they're like, you better get out of the house during the day. Lock up, but get out of the house.
Right.
But they don't do that anymore. And the video games these days, and I'm not a gamer. I never really, besides Quarter, Donkey Kong and stuff like that, we had an Atari, all that, but I just never got hooked on it because I was just hooked on drawing.
Same here.
So I never, to this day, I see people that just play games forever, and I just don't get.
I mean, they look cool. They look cool. They look very cinematic. Cool. I mean, I get the fact that these games now have stories that you can follow.
Sure.
You know, but at the same time, it just wasn't anything that I ever got really hooked on. And to me, to this day, when I think about video games, I just think to myself, yeah, I want a classic Miss Pac-Man in my house that has like the 60 games that are already plugged into the board. I mean, you can buy those now for like $500 bucks, right?
Yeah.
And I just think to myself, like, that's kind of the only real video game that would potentially get me interested. I will say that this new RoboCop video game that they came out with recently looks amazing. And it is very tempting. I think you would find it very tempting too when you look at this thing and the fact that how detailed it is. And they got Peter Weller to come back and do the voiceover.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it's very cool, man. And they're obviously gunning for, you know, Gen X and trying to get, you know, guys like you and I pulled into gaming as well as the younger kids who are already there.
Well,
but, I just think it's just different. Generations are different. And you and I, we'd go to the arcade, we'd spend our 10 or 20 bucks, and then that was kind of it. You had to go find something else to do.
Yeah, you leave. Yeah.
The Nintendo and the Sega and all that stuff when we were growing up, it just wasn't quite the draw to sit there all day for like 7 or 8 hours and play with people in different countries and different states and whatnot. You know, it was just like, you know, it was a time killer. And then, you know, you get bored and you'd want to go do something else.
Right.
So it's just generational, I think, more than anything.
It is, but there's so much stuff that's what's old is becoming new again.
Yeah.
Except for comics.
I know.
You know, because look at it. I think, one, I tell you, and I wouldn't do this if I ran Marvel or DC as a whole for the line, but I would significantly cut down to probably just the main books, you know, like say Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. Yeah. I consider Green Lantern, you know, Aquaman, whatever. And then, because it wouldn't cost much as to do this, I would just do kind of like Marvel did back in the 80s with X-Men Classic.
Yeah.
I would be like, all right, let's not do the Golden Age. You know, keep doing those as the big thick omnibuses and stuff.
Reprint those.
But why not take, you know, Green Lantern #1 that came out in the 60s, early 60s, 1960 even, whatever it was, and put it back out. Maybe, yeah, in fact, I'd say, yeah, let's put it back out, you know, like the facsimile editions they're doing, except not a facsimile because you still want to have current ads for advertisers, but the exact same story. I wouldn't change the coloring. If you had to fix the coloring because of the files, I would do that, but I would keep it flat, you know, like the way it looked.
Yeah.
And the thing that pisses me off about the facsimile editions are they're charging regular current $4.99. Now, I'm not saying they should charge $0.25 if they do a facsimile edition of a book that was $0.25.
Yeah, but how about $2? How about $1.99?
$2.
Right.
$2, guys. You're not paying for any of this talent.
Right.
The best you're doing is if this facsimile sells well enough, you're kicking a royalty to anybody that's still alive.
Right.
Other than that, you're not paying a page rate for any of this stuff. And you're not even putting in current ads. Not like that's a sales feature for me as a current ad, but still, how about $2? And don't even give me, well, we're printing it on nicer paper. Okay, we'll print it on newsprint. That's how it originally came out, and it looked great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would start with like I do, like the example Green Lantern #1 from 1960, and I do it for a year, and I would just see how it sells, you know, and just do that because it might freaking be awesome and it might take off. You don't know. Now, if it doesn't after a year, you can't tell me they don't have enough discretionary spending to try that experiment for a year. Because you can't try it for 3 months. It's too short. I think 6 months is too short as well. So try it for a year and knock it down to $2. And the other thing I would do is if I re-put out, you know, took over like a current Superman book, I would fashion it because everything is old is new again, except in comics. I would take what I think is still one of the best decades, the 80s, and trade dress it that way. I would mandate, I want splash pages to start the book. you know?
Yeah.
And I think there was a time where it was, I might be wrong, and it might not have been a hard and fast rule, but start with a splash, end with a splash,
Yeah.
you know, get at least 1 2-page spread in there. And I'm not talking, and this was a book I just saw recently. I'm not talking about a 2-page spread of, it was a 2-page spread. It was within the past few months. It was in either Action or Superman. I don't remember what Superman book. It was a fucking 2-page spread of Metropolis, right? And Superman on the screen was, you know, if the page is, you know, 9 inches high, the Superman figure might have been an inch and a half tall. And then it was all Metropolis with a few insets, I think, running down the right-hand side.
Gotcha.
If I was the editor and I saw that, I'd send it right back to the artist. I'd go, I love it. Now that Superman figure that's an inch big, I want him 8 inches big.
Yeah.
On the left-hand side. And don't make it like you drew it, where it's a back shot, where his cape is covering most of his body, even though it's flittering in the wind.
Lazy work.
Guess what? It's freaking comics. You can cheat it. So, gotta do it the right way. If he's on the left-hand side and the city's behind me, it's a side view, and he's like, what?
Yeah.
And you can actually see a 3/4 of him.
Right.
As his head is turned into the scene.
Right.
Because as a comic book reader, not just an artist, as an artist, I don't care about a back shot that the cape's covering. And as a reader, I'm like, no, I want to see a cool shot of Superman hovering over Metropolis, not something that's an inch big on an 8-inch high piece of paper. Yeah. And another thing is, I'd be like, hey, writer, I don't want to see a 2-page spread of Metropolis when there's nothing even wrong with it. Now, if you tell me, oh no, it's a 2-page spread of Metropolis, but it's the city's in turmoil and it's burning.
Right.
I don't want to see that as a 2-page spread because it's not that fucking exciting.
Right.
Make it the panel across the top and then have Superman flying into the scene. Cool as hell.
Yeah. Yeah. I you know, something, you know, you're talking about the tagging and also just, you know, we're talking about the Kubert School and learning the basic fundamentals of visual storytelling. It seems like with the current crop of artists, and I'm not talking about any of the pros, I'm not talking about Tony Daniel, and I'm talking about Francis Manipool, because all those guys have left. They're all doing their own thing now. They're all doing their own creator own stuff. But the current crop at Marvel and DC, which almost looks like fan art to me, there is no basic fundamentals of commercial art in any of the artwork. And I'm talking the pencils, the inks, and the coloring. I don't see any basic fundamentals being employed. I don't think that the people that they're currently using, the artists, I don't think that they have been taught the basic fundamentals, you know, and it comes down to, like you said, you should be able to go through the entire comic book just relying on the visuals, because it's a visual medium first. It'll always be a visual medium first. They have, I think, moved away from that to where it's got to be all this supposition and it's all word balloons and lots of dialogue, not enough action. You know, I like action in every single panel, even if it's somebody just drinking a beer, eating Wolverine in his costume in the kitchen, eating cereal.
Well,
I mean, I think that there's got to be.
The thing is, and Joe kind of taught this too, anything can be drawn cool and dramatic.
Yes.
Even if it is Wolverine drinking a beer in the kitchen.
Ordinary things
that panel to make it cool looking from the perspective, the angle you're drawing it, even how he's drinking the beer, because in Will Eisner's book, Sequential Storytelling.
I have that book. Yep.
Yeah. Even in Will Eisner's book, there's a section, or it might only be 1 page, but it's about picking the right moment to draw. So if you're drawing a guy getting out of a car, there's many visuals. Like you could literally take your video camera on your phone and just, you know, hit record and have your spouse, friend get out of the car, shut the door and walk away. And that's kind of an example he used, except in drawing. And then you look at it frame by frame to see what's the coolest shot to draw of that. And a lot of what you see in comics these days, I think, are storyboard artists that are just changing the shape of the panel because it's not a storyboard.
Yeah.
But the shots are pretty freaking boring.
They are.
They're not
They're real
dynamic.
sterile looking. They're not
Oh,
dynamic.
they're so sterile.
They
They've
don't
never read a
have.
copy of How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way.
I was going to segue into the your opinion on the current state and health of the comic book market as a whole in the U.S. We've been kind of talking about that, but I mean, what do you think the future for Marvel and DC is going forward? And do you think that the indie comic scene will continue to grow and attract more professionals away from the big two, and therefore kind of tell more compelling stories than the big two can, and therefore attract more of a market?
Yeah, I mean, I think that indie comic scene with crowdfunding and stuff will continue to grow because it is you get that relationship with the fans through YouTube and stuff like this, which I think is very vital if you're going to do this. You know, if you're going to go down this path, you've got to create that relationship with the fans, and it's fun because look, if I had this type of thing when I was growing up to be able to, you know, talk to, you know, or not even talk to, but interact or just watch Mike Zeck any day I wanted to, or John Byrne or George Perez or, you know, whoever from the 80s that I really enjoyed growing up, I'd lose my mind. So I think it's cool. And I think it's good. I mean, for the creator, I think it's good because we are isolationists for most part, working in our little our studios and stuff. So we do get to interact. So I think it's going to grow that way. When it comes to more professionals doing it, you know, I know guys whose names I used to see on monthly stuff. I haven't seen in a long time, and I just don't know what they're doing. You know, maybe they're thinking about doing this, and because, you know, we fell out of touch, I just don't know. And next thing I know, boom, they have something out there.
Yeah.
With Marvel and DC, you know, if they continue the track they're going on, they're just going to dig their own grave.
Yeah.
I don't think they'll ever go away. I think they'll definitely shrink more. And I could even see if they got somebody in there business wise, with a good head on their shoulders, I think they can turn it around. And I think they could even take the route of what Marvel did in the late 90s with Rob and Jim Lee doing the Heroes Reborn stuff, licensing it out for a year. And because think about it, what if DC was like, okay, here's the deal. You want to do a Superman book? This is the deal. You know, this is the business deal that's going to happen. Basically you fund it because you're licensing it from us. So we're not paying you a page rate to do it. So I would think they'd be more picky with who they let it out to do. But let's say there were two creators and they both came up with great ideas and want to license it. And DC was like, yeah, we'll let you both license it. And one guy does something and his vision's like Golden Age type stories, and another guy does Silver Age type stuff. You know, if the license term is for like something small, like you each get to do 4 issues or whatever, you know, at that point, it really is a thing where you could see them splitting any profits from it.
Yeah.
And DC being, you know, getting more because they own it. So say 60-40 or something. And I could see them trying to maybe do something like that. That means the guy that they said yes to is really going to have to step up, because obviously if it sells, that guy just wrote a ticket to maybe do 8 issues or something.
Right.
And I could see them licensing stuff out, you know, and just not having control from the standpoint of, yeah, we're not just going to print whatever you do. We're going to look at it and we'll have say. So no, you're not going to be able to do a scene in the book where Superman and Lois are going crazy like an X-rated movie. No, that's right. There are guidelines you have to follow.
Sure.
But beyond that, you know, this is a story you pitched us. So, okay, as long as it's not a bait and switch, we'll do it and see what happens.
It's similar to Mark Miller's idea that he had a couple months ago about how to revive the Big Two, which was just go straight to creators, give them a 50-50 profit split.
Or 50-50, yeah.
Don't pay them a page rate, but give them a 50-50 split, give them a lot of creative freedom. You know, the story that they tell doesn't have to be
or, you know, the other way to do it too. The other way to do it too is is, I haven't had a ton of experience in real book publishing beyond the couple books I wrote, How to Draw books.
Mm-hmm.
But the other way to do it too is you give them an advance against it.
Sure.
So if it is a 50-50 split, the company would have to do a little bit of research on their own and figure out, okay, we think it'll sell this much, so we're comfortable giving you upfront X amount.
Sure.
Now, if the book is successful, like let's just take, a burgeoning new novelist, and right out of the gate, he pitches a book and they're like, yeah, we like that. We'll give you, and I'm just making up a number, we'll give you a year to write, to flesh it out, write the whole book. You're going to work with this editor. They're going to check in with you time to time, and we'll give you a $10,000 advance. Now, is a $10,000 going to sweat you throughout the whole year? Of course it's not.
Mm-hmm.
So you do need to do other work, but it also, just because they give you a year to do it doesn't mean you have to take the whole year. Maybe you're a fast writer and you can do it in 6 months,
Sure.
3 months.
Sure.
I mean, if you do it in 3 months and they love what you did and whatnot, well, then that 10 goes a little farther.
Mm-hmm.
Point is, you do it as an advance against royalties. If the book comes out and it sells real well, trust me, your advance is going to be more for the next book.
Yeah.
And it could be more till you go, oh, well, now I don't have to work a full-time job to write the second book. I can work part-time because the advance went up so much more.
Yeah.
So I could see, going off of what I even said and Miller said and doing it in an advanced way. So here's an advance for you to work on it.
Mm-hmm.
And, do that.
And that's typically what book publishers do.
That's what book publishers, that's what they did on my 2 how-to books. And the second one, I got more of an advance than I did on the first one.
Yeah. Whether it's Matthew McConaughey or whether it's Michelle Obama, they get these huge advances, and the publisher, it's got to sell so many books in order to make that advance back. And then after the advance is made back, then you got basically a royalty split at that point. I think that could work. How did these guys attract big names, big talent back? And I think it's, 2 ways. It's obviously paying them more. They can't really do that on the page rate. So it's got to be some kind of an incentive from the standpoint of royalties and a profit split, but also giving them creative carte blanche, right? Look, you have, it's like Silvestri's Batman. He had that thing sitting around. He's had that idea forever. And it's kind of a one-off, right? You just put it out. They should do the same thing with John Byrne. Get him out of retirement. He's got that X-Men book.
They don't have to get him out of retirement. The guy drew 32 issues of X-Men Elsewhere, and they couldn't. And I know no inside information, but from the outside information, you could say I know, is I guess him and CB Sobalski did talk, and they just couldn't come to terms. I don't know.
It makes no sense to me. It makes no
sense at all, because it's all penciled.
It's all the work is done. The work is largely done.
Right.
It just needs
now,
to be
some of it's scattered because he is selling the pencil pages.
Right.
And some of the pages were bought, and I know for a fact, because he posted them, Scott Williams inked like three or four pages.
Wow.
And they look beautiful. And Joe Rubinstein, I think, inked a few pages because the guy would pay for the pencils and get the art from Byrne and be like, I want this guy to ink it, But John has scans of it all.
Yeah.
I've got the trade paperbacks of the whole thing.
Yeah.
So
that's a perfect example of.
But the point is,
do a split with John Byrne and release that as a one-off.
Just release it either as just a big fat omnibus. Release all 32 issues monthly. That's 3 effing years of work almost.
Yeah.
I've talked with other creators about what we'd like to see, and it would be cool to see and he did break it up into 6 issue, 10, 12 issue arcs. So there are arcs to it. So you could break up an arc. So let's say I read it all, but let's just say it's 6 issue arcs. So there's 5 story arcs. So you could go, Scott Williams, do you want to ink this 5 issue arc?
Yeah.
The next great inker, because they got to be great. They got to be top notch.
Absolutely.
Do you want to ink this arc?
Mm-hmm.
Or, you just go with one inker for all 30 for the real consistency of it.
Sure.
But then I would obviously you get a top tier colorist on it. you know, and it's not even with all the bells and whistles, just because that's the thing too. And you know, this is a colorist. A great color job can be flat color.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah,
it can be nice and simple because it all comes down to the palette.
What are your plans going forward as far as new projects that you're working on? I know you got another core draft.
I mean, we're just working on that. The launch page, or not launch, the sign up page for the campaign should go up. We're looking at the 1st of February to put the sign up page up for Core Draft Volume 2.
Cool.
And I mean, we have something else we're working on, but we're not ready to announce it yet. So
cool. So you got another creator-owned thing that you're working on outside of Core Draft.
It's Core Draft related.
Okay, gotcha. In the same universe.
Yeah.
Okay, very cool.
So, yeah,
well, I like the direction you're going. I love sword and sorcery. I mean, I just can't get enough of that stuff. You know.
Yeah, I like drawing it. It's fun stuff.
Well, we grew up on that stuff, man. Whether it's He-Man, Beastmaster, there's so much, or Conan. I mean, there's so much great stuff. In that genre. Well, sadly, we're out of time. Andy, go ahead and give everyone your social media coordinates so they know how to find you and what you're up to.
No problem. It's right there, Andy Smith Art on X. Instagram, Facebook, just search Andy Smith Art, Andy Smith Cartoonist, I think is the actual name of the Facebook business page. And YouTube as well. And there you go. And AndySmithArt.com and CoreDraft.com.
What's the best way our viewers can support you?
I mean, with the campaigns I do, because you guys are literally the producers of the book. Like there's a producer for a movie. You guys are the producers of the book. Without you guys supporting the books through the Indiegogo campaigns, there'd be no books.
Yeah.
It's not, and I don't begrudge anybody that how they get their stuff out there. And I've seen guys that are like, oh yeah, I'm going to get the book 100% done before I launch the campaign. And I'm like, more power to you. I can't do that because I need the funds to be able to do the book.
Right.
So you guys are the producers. So that's the best way. If you're interested in Core Draft or any of my stuff, just go to either AndySmithArt.com or, Core Draft and check out the store. It's all there. And that's honestly the best way. It's the fans and the viewers and all you guys that really support us all in this new venture and this new world. And hopefully, like the early pioneers, years from now, people will look back at the guys that were early on in this and go, wow, that's cool. And it's because of them laying the groundwork that helped everybody else. So.
Yeah, I think the indie creators that are doing the creator-owned stuff are definitely trailblazers. It's brought a new dimension to direct marketing and going straight to the customer. And you're right. I mean, the fans that support your books and other creator-owned crowdfunded books are producers. They are the patron saints of our art. They're the ones that make it happen.
And it's different from, and because there is a big difference, because sure, people could go, there's always been indie creators and you can knock them off. Like, in the 90s, Lady Death and Billy with She and Nexus, and think about stuff like that. Those are indie books with indie creators. However, except for say like Lady Death and She, which those guys were backing and funding these books, but they were still going through Diamond and distribution and all that. Once again, nothing wrong with it. But the difference between Billy Tucci and Brian then and now is now they're directly going to you guys to help fund and support and be the producer on the books. And they're the ones that you can pretty much say their hands have touched every book that you get, that their hands have touched it.
No, it's an exciting time. I love I love how the crowdfunded universe of books are bringing the creator and the fans closer together. I think that's really special. Thanks, man. Really appreciate it. For more videos like this, tune in and subscribe to Bounding into Comics on YouTube and Rumble. Also, make sure to like this video, leave us a comment. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again, brother. Appreciate it.
You got it, man.